I can't lie, the ending really confused me. I have absolutely no idea what happened. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know, my name is Faith and thank you so much for watching. It's finally December, so today we are going over my November reading wrap-up. As always, this video will contain spoilers and I will put timestamps of when I talk about each book in the description below. For those of you who have been watching my videos, you might know that I have been on a journey to get my physical TBR down as low as possible. Let's just say I actually decided to end the book buying ban because I was very happy with where I was at with my physical TBR. And then Black Friday came and I went crazy with the book buying. Normally in these videos I like to tell you every single time that my physical TBR changed. So I'd be like, I read this book, that's -1 of the TBR, but then I got these 2 books, so that's +2 to the physical TBR. However, I did forget to keep track of that this month. I started the month with either 43 or 44 books on my physical TBR and I ended the month with 45. I read 8 books in the month of November and 3 of those were pre-orders that I ordered months ago and then they just arrived this month. So really for those, they kind of canceled each other out because I immediately added 1 to my physical TBR, but then also immediately took it away because I read them like as soon as I got them. And some of you might be like, Faith, your physical TBR only increased by 1. That's not that bad. It only increased by 1 because that does not include the full Black Friday haul. Because my online order from Scribble's Bookshop hasn't arrived yet, so obviously that wasn't added to the physical TBR for November. I also went to Barnes & Noble on December 1st and took advantage of the last day of their members get 3 times the stamps deal. So those books also were not added to the November TBR. They'll be added to the December TBR. So I guess the TBR I need to be freaking out about is December because you know what? Yes, November increased by 1. Not that bad, especially when you compare it to what December will definitely be. But that's a problem for December, and right now we're focusing on November. I kind of just wanted to say all that to get it out of the way so that I wouldn't have to focus on my physical TBR as I'm going through these books. So just know I ended November with 45 books on my physical TBR, and December is already just a little bit more than that. But now that all of that is out of the way, let's get into my November reading wrap-up. The first book I read was The Baby Dragon Cafe by A.T. Qureshi. I apologize if I mispronounced that. If you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, you probably know that I was really looking forward to reading this book. So I'm very sad to announce that I actually DNF'd it. I really just did not like it at all. I got to around page 100 and I just could not do it anymore. It's essentially insta-love, which I just really don't like. I like it when it's one-sided, but I don't like when it's reciprocated right off the bat because where's the yearning? The writing was a bit too whimsical and bubbly for me. I really think it boils down to that this book just was not my vibe at all. So if you don't mind insta-love and you like super happy, whimsical, bubbly writing, I think that you would like this book. Unfortunately, I just did not. The next book I read was The Defender by Anna Huang. I feel like I'm the only person who really enjoyed the striker, so to no surprise, I really enjoyed this book as well. My literal only problem with the striker was that it was too long and I felt like it dragged at parts, but I didn't feel that way with this book at all. Also, I've read every single one of Anna Huang's books and I definitely feel like this is one of the better written ones. I feel like the characters in this one just had a lot more depth than they do in some of her other books. That's not to say I don't think the characters have depth in the other books, I just feel like they had more of it in this one. I also feel like I relate a lot to Brooklyn and I always love a book where I can really resonate with one of the main characters. I really liked Vincent and I am a sucker for the coach's daughter and player pairing. I liked the subplot of Vincent having a stalker. I definitely feel like those bits were sprinkled in well. I was super excited for this book and let me just say it did not disappoint at all. And somehow I'm even more excited for The Keeper, which is the next and to my understanding last book in this series. Overall, I gave it 5 stars and I would recommend it. And if you read The Striker and your only issue with it was that it was too long and it dragged at parts, I encourage you to read this one because like I said, this one did not feel that way at all. Next, I read Good Spirits by B.K. Borison. Honestly, I don't know why, but I wasn't expecting to like this book at all, but I ended up loving it. For those of you who don't know, I joined a book club that just started at the beginning of November, so this was actually our first read, and I will be honest, if this was not the read for the book club, I would never have read this book. So let's just say I'm very glad that it was picked for book club because again, I loved it. This was also my first B.K. Borison book, and after reading it, I definitely will be reading the rest of her books. The characters were written so well, all of the choices that they made felt very realistic, like choices that people would actually make if this was actually happening. I can't remember the last time I read a romance book that I was actually scared that the couple wouldn't have a happily ever after. I cried for the last like 50 pages of this book, and I don't really cry at romance books unless it's like a character dying or something. And I guess the part I did cry at technically was like Nolan dying in a way, so I guess technically it did involve dying, but also not. But either way, for BK Borison to make me cry that much for the last like 50 pages of this book was an accomplishment on her part. I've been saying this for a while, but not every character who's a mean person needs to have some sort of redemption arc, so I'm very glad that her mother did not get one. I'm pretty sure this is going to be a series because when you look it up, it says Ghosted #1, so I imagine there's going to be 2 more books, one about Ghost of Christmas Present and another about Ghost of Christmas Future, and if those books are actually a thing, I definitely will be reading them. In case you couldn't tell, I gave this book 5 stars. I loved Nolan and I loved Harriet, and I just loved the book. This is the perfect holiday book, and at the time I'm posting this, it is December, so you should go read this if you haven't. Next, I read Brimstone by Callie Hart. I really liked Quicksilver. I gave it 4.5 stars, so I was very excited for this book. So I'm really bummed to have to say I really did not enjoy the first half of this book. It was so slow. It felt like nothing was happening. It really felt like the first 300 plus pages were literally just a massive info dump. I'm not going to say the last half of the book fully makes up for it. However, the last half definitely saved the book in my eyes. The second half was definitely a lot more engaging and entertaining for me than the first half. Both Quicksilver and Brimstone contain smut, and I didn't feel this way about Quicksilver, but every single smut scene in this book, except for maybe one, felt fully misplaced and like it was literally just there to be able to say that this book has smut, and at that point, I would really rather just read a book with no smut. If you like these books or if you follow Book Talk Drama, you probably already know this, but I'm gonna say it anyways. There were too many grammar and continuity and spelling errors for a traditionally published book. That being said, no amount of grammar, spelling, or continuity errors condones you cyberbullying anybody who worked on this book. So if you've done that, you need to take a step back and check yourself into a mental institution because something is wrong with you. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I just couldn't talk about this book without bringing that up. I like that we got Kingfisher's point of view in this book. Honestly, I feel like the first half of this book would have been even more boring if we didn't. I also really liked the progression that we got of Kingfisher and Ceres's relationship. And I can't remember who, but I did see somebody else say this. Carry-On is appropriately named because he really carried this book, and I have to 100% agree with that. I can't lie, the ending really confused me. I have absolutely no idea what happened. And the last thing I have to say about this book is I mentioned this when I read Quicksilver. I do not like the name Kingfisher. That being said, I really don't like the fact that his name was changed and his name is now Kaiden. Honestly, I just wish he had been called Kaiden from the beginning. Even with my issues with this book, I still am looking forward to book 3, and I ended up giving this book a 3.5 stars overall. And guys, I kind of feel bad about this, but I really can't give a firm yes I would recommend this book or no I wouldn't until I read the final book in the series, which hasn't come out yet. But to my understanding, the next book is the final book and that will be out next year. So I guess for now, I just have to say maybe I would recommend it. And then I read Slapshot by Chelsea Curto, and guys, I am obsessed with DC stars. I have been looking forward to Hudson's book since Face Off, and I finally read it and I loved it. I love the way Chelsea Curto writes her characters. They have so much depth and I feel like they're so believable. Like, I feel like this is how real people would react if they were put in these scenarios. Hudson immediately accepted Lucy, Madeline's daughter, into his life, like immediately after he met Madeline, and also before any sort of romantic feelings were evolving between the two, and that is honestly the standard for single mom romances. Like, I expect every single MMC to react the way that Hudson Hayes did to that. Madeline is very much, I know exactly what I want and I'm not gonna let any man change it, and she stuck to that even after they got together, and I really like that for her because honestly, I would have folded for Hudson Hayes immediately. So Madeline, you are a lot stronger than I am. This is a sports romance, and honestly, I have to say that I feel like some sports romances literally just have one of the characters playing a sport to be able to call it a sports romance, and that sport really has no impact on the plot whatsoever. So I love that hockey is actually a main focus of the book, and it is central to Hudson's character. I literally did not want to put this book down. I gave it 5 stars. It was so good, and I highly recommend this book. And obviously, I followed that up with Hat Trick by Chelsea Curto. And I have the same feelings about the characters that I did in Slapshot. She just writes them so well. I knew what happened to Riley even before I started Face Off, and let me just say, I thought I was ready for that, but I was not. I lost count of how many times I cried reading this book. I've loved Riley since Face Off, and I've been rooting for him and Lexi since Face Off, so to finally be able to read their story, it did not disappoint. I read the last roughly 300 pages in one sitting. It was that good. Riley getting to play hockey again at the end, I cried so hard. To my understanding, Sinbin, which is the next book in the series and also comes out the day after I'm posting this video, takes place at the same time as this book, and I definitely caught a ton of those Sinbin teasers and Easter eggs that were in this book. So let me just say, I am so excited for Sinbin. I'm sure it's obvious, but in case it isn't, this is clearly another 5-star book, and Chelsea Curto really can just do no wrong. I would highly recommend this series. And then I read In the Dark by Chelsea Curto. And guys, I have to be honest, I am not a dark romance girly, and I really only read this because Chelsea Curto Curto wrote it. That being said, there were a couple dark romance elements that I liked. Like, honestly, and I think this is an unpopular opinion, I liked the stalker aspect. Would I like that in real life? Absolutely not, so don't get any ideas. My favorite MMC trait is when he is absolutely, completely obsessed with her, so that stalker thing really just multiplied that by 1,000. Again, I would not like that in real life, so don't get any ideas. Also, the smut was smutting, and that's all I'm gonna say about that. There's an author's note at the beginning that makes it very clear that this is a low plot book, so even though I prefer more plot heavy books, I really feel like it's unfair of me to base my rating off of that because I knew going in that that's not what this would be. Because to me, that's like reading a romance book and then being mad that there's romance in it, you know? Oh my god, wait, real life example that I saw somebody give a bad review to a fantasy book because they thought it was unrealistic because there was a talking frog in it. I think about that review all the time. All that to say, I'm not basing my star rating on that. This was my first Chelsea Curto book outside the DC Stars world, and I did like the couple references that we got to DC Stars. My only complaint with this book is that I do wish the characters had just a little bit more depth than they did. Overall, 4 stars. I'm still not a dark romance girly, but honestly, I probably would recommend this book unless you don't like smut and you're like super, super, super against dark romance, then probably not. And the last book I read this month was The Song of Achilles. I actually started reading this a few years ago, but I DNF'd on chapter like 3, I think, because I was just really bored with it. So if I'm being completely honest, I picked it up this time honestly expecting to DNF it again and just getting rid of this book, but that did not happen. I loved this book so much, and I cannot believe I've been letting this sit on my shelf unread for years. I cried so hard at the end of this book. I filmed my review to post to TikTok like right after I finished it, and I had to stop so many times because I kept crying. I definitely go for books that have a happy ending, so this was not my typical read at all. It just so happens that it was really popular at the time that I was getting really back into reading, and I heard a ton of other people talking about it at the time, so I decided to get it for myself. That being said, it kind of has a happy ending because they do actually end up reuniting in the underworld. But actually, Madeline Miller, I need you to release an epilogue so that I can actually see them and get to read about them reuniting, please. I really only have one complaint about this book, and it is a minor one. There were so many time skips, especially at the beginning, and sometimes it did get a little confusing. This is another book where I felt like the characters were written very, very well. I'm not complaining, but that did seem to be a common theme this month. So this was another 5-star read for me, and I definitely would recommend it. Those are the 8 books I read in December, and 5 of them were 5 stars, and I definitely feel like that was the best reading month I've had in a long time, even with that DNF at the beginning of the month. Like I said, I ended the month with 45 books on my physical TBR, and you should definitely expect that number to be higher at the end of December. And I actually can't think of anything else that I have to say, so I think that is all that I have for you guys today. Be sure to like and subscribe and follow my Instagram and my TikTok. Both are linked in the description below for more bookish content. I hope you guys also had a good reading month in November. If not, I hope it's better in December. I'm wishing you all a very happy holiday season. Love you guys. Bye!